They mocked the black maid for wearing old shoes, not knowing the Mafia boss bought the venue to silence them. Tasha Williams had worked tirelessly for years to provide for her family. But tonight, as she entered the lavish banquet hall, she could feel the weight of judgment in the air. She had been hired as a maid for an upscale event, her dark skin contrasting sharply against the elegant decor. Her uniform was simple, her shoes worn and scuffed from years of service. She could feel the whispers before they even started. "Look at those shoes," one of the guests whispered, barely hiding her disdain. "How is she even here?" Another voice chimed in, louder this time. "She doesn't belong in this place." The laughter followed, like a sharp slap to the face, and Tasha, with her head held high, pretended not to hear. She had learned over the years to keep her emotions in check, to stay invisible. She had to. The guests continued their mockery, unaware of the silent figure standing just a few feet away. Dominic Romano, the Mafia boss, had been watching. He didn't show it, but he was aware of everything that happened in his presence. His sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene before him. When he saw Tasha, his gaze lingered for a moment longer, noting her composure despite the cruel comments being thrown her way. He didn't move immediately, but his presence was a palpable force in the room. The laughter died down, but the tension in the air thickened. Tasha continued to serve the guests, her every movement graceful despite the harsh words that clung to her. She felt the burn of humiliation in her chest, but she remained silent, focusing on her duties. That's when it happened. Robert Mitchell, the event manager, walked up to her with a look of disdain, holding out his drink for her to refill. "You should really do something about those shoes," he said with a smirk, clearly enjoying the power he held over her. His words were like daggers, but she swallowed her pride and nodded. "I'll get that for you, sir." She turned to walk away, but the crowd's laughter started again, louder this time, fueled by Robert's words. It was more than she could take. Her hand trembled as she reached for the drink, but before she could pour it, the room fell silent. Dominic had stood up, his sharp eyes now fixed on Robert. "Enough," he said, his voice cold and controlled, cutting through the noise. The sudden silence was deafening. Robert froze, his smirk fading into uncertainty. The rest of the room watched in stunned silence as Dominic moved forward, his steps deliberate. Tasha, still holding the drink, didn't know what to think. Was this a coincidence? Or had he seen everything? Dominic reached the center of the room, his gaze sweeping over the guests. "I've just purchased this venue," he said, his voice echoing with authority. "And I've decided that none of you will be here for long if this behavior continues." The tension in the room was palpable. Robert's face turned pale, and the guests shifted uncomfortably. Dominic turned to Tasha, his expression softening for the first time. "You're doing fine," he said quietly, before turning back to the crowd. The guests stood frozen, realizing that the power they had so arrogantly assumed over Tasha had just been shattered. Dominic's presence in the room had changed everything. Tasha stood still, her breath catching in her throat. The weight of his words didn't fully hit her until she saw the guests scrambling to pack their things. The room that had once been filled with mockery and disdain now emptied in silence. Dominic's words had done more than just silence the crowd. They had shifted the entire atmosphere. It was more than just power. It was justice, and it was something Tasha had never expected. She watched as Dominic turned and walked toward her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone genuine, his voice no longer cold. Tasha could hardly believe what was happening. Her body felt like it was suspended in time. Yes," she said, barely finding her voice. "Thank you." Dominic nodded, his eyes briefly meeting hers before he turned and left the room. The event was over, but for Tasha, the night had just begun. She had been seen, not just as a maid, but as a person deserving of respect. It was a feeling she hadn't known she'd been missing. The echoes of the evening's events would stay with her for a long time, but one thing was certain: she would never let anyone make her feel small again. The next few days were a blur for Tasha. After the shocking events at the banquet hall, she found herself reflecting on everything that had happened. She couldn't believe the way Dominic had stood up for her. The contrast between how she had been treated by the guests and how he had treated her was overwhelming. She had always felt invisible, always underestimated because of her job and the color of her skin. But now, Dominic had given her a glimpse of something she had never known: respect. The days after the event passed in a daze. Tasha's phone buzzed with messages, but most of them were from family members expressing disbelief at the news that she had been part of such a dramatic turn of events. She didn't know how to explain it to them. How could she? One moment, she was just a maid, being mocked by strangers at a fancy event, and the next, she was being defended by one of the most powerful men in the city. But for all the messages she received, one stood out. It was from her younger sister, Keisha. Tasha, I saw what happened on the news. I'm so proud of you. You're not just a maid. You're a queen. Keep your head high. Love you. Tasha couldn't hold back the tears as she read it. She had never felt like a queen before, never felt like she deserved to be anything more than invisible. But now, things were changing. The next evening, Dominic Romano called her. It was a simple phone call, but it sent her heart racing. He asked if she could meet him the next morning at his office, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, and for a brief moment, she thought about how different her life felt in that moment. Tasha, Dominic said, turning to face her. Please, have a seat. His voice was kind, but there was a seriousness to it that she hadn't expected. She sat down in the chair across from him, her hands nervously clutching her purse. I've been thinking about you since the other night, Dominic said, his gaze steady. I don't take kindness for granted, and I certainly don't ignore it when I see it. What you did for that child, comforting him, making him feel safe, was something that not many people would do. It takes heart. Tasha felt her chest tighten. She didn't know what to say. She had just done what felt right, what she had been taught to do. She had grown up in a world where helping others was the only thing that made sense. But hearing Dominic speak about it made her feel like something more. Thank you, Mr. Romano, she finally said, her voice soft. I didn't do it for recognition. It was just instinct. He was in pain. I couldn't ignore that. Dominic studied her for a long moment before nodding. I know, and that's why I'm offering you something. I want you to work for me, Tasha. Not as a maid, not as someone invisible. I want you to be part of my team. You have potential. You have something that most people don't have. The words hit her like a wave. She had never considered that her life could be different, that someone like Dominic Romano would even think of offering her a job. I don't know what to say, Tasha stammered, still in disbelief. Dominic smiled, his eyes softening. You don't have to say anything right now, but think about it. You've been underestimated your whole life. You deserve more than this. I can give you a position in my company, Tasha. You'll work directly with me. You'll help with things that matter. Your life doesn't have to stay the way it is. The offer hung in the air, a dream Tasha had never dared to dream. She thought of her family, of her mother who worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet, of her younger sister Keisha, who was studying hard to make a better life for herself. Could she really take a step into a world so different from the one she had known? But then she remembered the moment at the event, when Dominic had silenced the crowd, when he had made her feel seen. She had never felt that before. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to be something more than invisible. She looked up at him, her heart pounding. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady. I'll work with you. Dominic's smile deepened. Good. I think you'll do great things. And Tasha, remember this. It's not just about the work. It's about the impact you can make. It's about who you choose to become. As she left his office, Tasha felt a sense of hope she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, she didn't just feel like a maid. She felt like she had the power to change her destiny. And that power was in her hands. It's been weeks since Tasha had accepted Dominic's offer, and every day brought new challenges. She had never imagined her life would take such a drastic turn. The sleek office buildings, the well-dressed executives, the powerful people who walked the halls of Dominic's empire. It all felt like a world she had only seen in movies. But now, it was her reality. At first, it was overwhelming. Every day, she learned something new, whether it was about the business world, the way people interacted at this level, or how to navigate the expectations placed upon her. She had been hired as an assistant, a role that required her to work closely with Dominic on various tasks. She quickly learned that his business wasn't just about the power he wielded. It was about respect. Respect for his employees, respect for his connections, and most importantly, respect for those who earned it. Tasha's first major task was to help organize a charity gala that Dominic had been hosting for years. It was a big event, and every detail had to be perfect. Tasha was entrusted with making sure everything went smoothly, from coordinating with the caterers to managing the guest list. It was a massive responsibility, but Dominic had confidence in her, and she was determined not to let him down. On the night of the gala, everything seemed to fall into place. The venue was filled with the most influential people in the city, and the atmosphere was nothing short of glamorous. Tasha, now dressed in a beautiful, tailored gown that Dominic had arranged for her, moved through the crowd with grace. She was no longer just a maid, but a woman of purpose in this high society world. As she watched the guests enjoy the evening, she realized how far she had come. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen by Dominic, by the people who now respected her, and, most importantly, by herself. But as the night wore on, a situation arose that tested everything she had learned. A well-known donor, Richard Thompson, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for being difficult, was unhappy with his seating arrangement. He had been placed at a table near the back, away from the main group of power players. His voice was loud as he complained, drawing the attention of several guests. "This is unacceptable," Richard said, his tone cutting through the music. "I've supported this event for years, and I'm treated like this?" Tasha, who was overseeing the event, stepped forward, ready to smooth things over. She approached Richard with a calm, professional smile. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concerns, and I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Let me find you a better table right away." But Richard wasn't satisfied. "You can't just move me. I demand to speak to Dominic. He knows how much I've done for this event." Tasha felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She didn't want to escalate things, but she knew this wasn't something she could handle alone. She looked across the room, catching Dominic's eye from across the crowd. He raised an eyebrow, silently asking if she needed help. With a small nod, Tasha walked toward him. "Dominic, Richard Thompson is upset about his seating arrangement. He's demanding to speak to you," she said quietly, not wanting to draw any more attention. Dominic's face didn't change. He simply nodded. "I'll handle it," he said, his voice calm and assured. As they approached Richard's table, the tension in the air thickened. Richard stood up, glaring at Dominic as he approached. "This is ridiculous, Romano. I've supported your event for years, and this is how I'm treated? I'm not going to stand for it," Richard snapped. Dominic didn't flinch. He looked Richard straight in the eye. "You're right. You've been a supporter of this event, and I appreciate that," Dominic said, his voice steady. "But let me make something clear. No one here is more important than anyone else. You're not going to disrupt this event. Not now, not ever." Richard's face reddened. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this, especially by someone as powerful as Dominic. But Dominic wasn't finished. "If you can't behave like a respectable guest, then maybe this event isn't for you," he added, his voice never rising but carrying an undeniable authority. The room went silent. Richard looked at Dominic, then at Tasha, then back at Dominic. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. For a moment, he simply stared at Dominic, as if trying to process what had just happened. And then, as if the air had been released from a balloon, Richard deflated. He didn't say another word. Dominic turned to Tasha, his gaze softening. "Thank you for handling that," he said quietly, his voice genuine. Tasha felt a rush of gratitude, but also something else, pride. She had done it. She had faced the storm head-on and come out stronger. She wasn't just a woman who had been mocked. She was a woman who had earned her place. As the evening continued, Tasha couldn't help but think about how far she had come. From the maid who had been humiliated by guests to the woman who stood tall in front of the most powerful people in the room, she had earned her place. She wasn't invisible anymore. And Dominic Romano had shown her that she didn't have to be. She was finally seeing herself for who she really was, a woman with strength, purpose, and a future that was completely hers to shape. The days following the charity gala were a whirlwind for Tasha. As she settled into her new role at Dominic's company, she found herself both excited and nervous. She was no longer just a maid or someone invisible in the eyes of society. She was a respected member of a team, working alongside people who had once seemed worlds apart from her. But with this new responsibility came new challenges. Tasha's first project was helping organize a major business conference for Dominic's company, a gathering that would bring together influential entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders from all over the country. It was a high-stakes event, and Tasha was given the responsibility of managing the logistics. The pressure was immense, but Dominic's trust in her gave her confidence. She was determined to prove herself. The conference was scheduled to take place in a state-of-the-art convention center in the heart of the city. Tasha spent long hours preparing for the event, meeting with vendors, confirming schedules, reviewing speaker lists, and ensuring everything was in place. Her mind raced with details, but she found a sense of purpose in the work. Dominic had shown her that she was capable of more than she had ever believed, and now she was starting to believe it herself. As the day of the conference drew nearer, Tasha found herself constantly thinking about how much her life had changed in such a short time. She no longer worried about being overlooked or underestimated. She had seen the way people respected Dominic, and she realized she had the potential to earn that same respect. On the morning of the conference, Tasha arrived early to oversee the final preparations. The venue was buzzing with activity as people set up booths, adjusted lighting, and prepared for the influx of guests. Tasha was moving from one task to the next, her heart beating with anticipation. The first few guests began to arrive, and the event slowly came to life. As Tasha was walking through the hall, checking everything one last time, she caught sight of Dominic across the room. He was deep in conversation with a group of investors, but when he saw her, his eyes lit up. "Tasha, you've done an incredible job," he said, his voice warm and sincere. She couldn't help but smile at his praise. "Thank you, Dominic. I couldn't have done it without your support." His eyes softened, and he gave her a nod. "You've earned this, Tasha. I knew from the moment I saw you at that event that you had something special. Don't forget that." His words meant more to her than she could express. She had come so far from the woman who had been mocked and overlooked just a few months ago. And now, standing in the heart of a successful event that she had organized, she finally felt like she was in control of her life. As the conference unfolded, Tasha felt a sense of pride she had never known. She watched as the guests mingled, networked, and discussed future opportunities. She saw the respect in their eyes, not just for the event itself, but for her, someone who had once been invisible in the eyes of people like this. But as the day went on, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Richard Thompson, the businessman who had caused so much tension at the gala, was attending the conference. Tasha felt a pang of unease. She had hoped to never cross paths with him again, but now here he was, strolling confidently through the event. He spotted her across the room and made his way over. Well, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I never thought I'd see the day when I'd be attending an event organized by a maid." Tasha's heart raced, but she didn't let his words get to her. She stood tall and met his gaze. "I'm not a maid, Mr. Thompson. I'm in charge of this event, and I suggest you show some respect." Richard smirked, clearly amused. "Respect? You're a long way from where you used to be, sweetheart." Tasha took a deep breath, her mind flashing back to the gala. She remembered how powerless she had felt, how the words of people like Richard had stung her deeply. But now, with Dominic's encouragement and her own hard work, she realized she had the power to stand up for herself. "Respect is earned, Mr. Thompson. And I've earned mine," she said, her voice steady and calm. Richard's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. He leaned in slightly, as if trying to intimidate her, but Tasha didn't flinch. She held her ground, and that was all it took. After a few moments of tense silence, Richard simply walked away, his arrogance deflated. Tasha watched him go, feeling a surge of pride. For the first time, she had stood up to someone who had once made her feel small. She wasn't that woman anymore. She had changed. She had the power to shape her own future. The conference continued smoothly, and by the end of the day, Tasha had received praise from Dominic and the other guests for her impeccable organization. As the event came to a close, she found herself standing by the door, watching as the last guests departed. Dominic approached her once again, a satisfied look on his face. "You did it, Tasha. You really did it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Tasha smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dominic. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Dominic placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression sincere. "You've always had it in you, Tasha. All you needed was someone to see it." Tasha nodded, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She had found her place in the world, and for the first time in her life, she knew her future was in her own hands. It's been several months since the conference, and Tasha had settled into her new life in ways she never expected. She was no longer just a member of Dominic's team. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with in her own right. Her confidence had grown with each passing day, and her work ethic had earned her respect from those around her. As she sat at her desk in the sleek office, reviewing some documents for an upcoming project, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her sister, Keisha. Tasha, I'm so proud of you. I can't believe how far you've come. When you're ready, I think we should have a family dinner. Mom wants to see you. Tasha smiled as she read the message, feeling a warmth in her chest. It had been months since she had seen her family. Between the demanding nature of her new role and her growing responsibilities, it had been hard to find the time. But the invitation was a reminder of the life she had left behind, the family that had always supported her, even when she didn't believe in herself. She decided it was time to go home. The next weekend, Tasha made her way back to her childhood home. As she walked through the front door, she was immediately greeted by the familiar scent of home-cooked meals and the soft hum of her mother's voice in the kitchen. Tasha, sweetheart, her mother called out, wrapping her in a warm embrace. I've missed you so much. Look at you, all grown up. Tasha could feel her mother's hands trembling slightly as she pulled her close. It was a simple gesture, but one that made Tasha realize just how much she had changed. I've missed you too, Mom, Tasha replied, feeling a lump form in her throat. Keisha, her younger sister, came running into the living room, her face lighting up when she saw Tasha. I can't believe you're here. We've been talking about you nonstop. Tasha laughed, feeling the weight of the past few months melt away. As they sat down for dinner, Tasha couldn't help but notice the looks her family gave her. It was as if they were seeing her in a new light, her mother with a sense of pride, her sister with awe. Tasha had always been the one who took care of everyone else, the one who worked hard but never expected anything in return. But now, she was someone different. She had learned to stand up for herself, to believe that she deserved more. And she was finally starting to believe it. As dinner went on, Tasha shared the details of her work with Dominic's company. She spoke about the projects she had been working on, the challenges she had faced, and the ways she had grown. Her family listened with rapt attention, their pride in her evident in their eyes. I never imagined this for you, her mother said softly, her voice full of emotion. You've always been so strong, but now you're truly living the life you deserve. Tasha felt a surge of gratitude wash over her. She had worked hard to get to this point, but it was the love and support of her family that had carried her through the darkest times. They had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but Tasha's mind kept drifting back to Dominic. She had seen him as a mentor, someone who had given her the opportunity to prove herself. But recently, she had begun to wonder if their relationship was changing. Dominic had always been kind to her, but there was something different now. The way he looked at her when they were alone, the way he sought her opinion on decisions, it made her feel like she was more than just an employee. Tasha wasn't sure what to make of it. She wasn't ready for a romantic relationship, not when she was still figuring out who she was in this new world. But there was no denying the connection they had. As the evening came to a close, Tasha hugged her family tightly, promising to visit more often. The love in her home reminded her of why she worked so hard in the first place. She was doing it for them. She was doing it for herself. The next day, as Tasha returned to the office, her thoughts were a whirlwind. She walked into the building, ready to face another day, but something felt different. Dominic was waiting for her in her office. His presence was calming, yet there was an intensity in his eyes that made Tasha's heart race. Tasha, can we talk? He asked, his voice low and steady. She nodded, her nerves rising as she followed him into a quiet conference room. I wanted to talk to you about something important, Dominic began, his tone more serious than usual. You've been doing exceptional work. I've been watching you, and I believe you have the potential to take on even more responsibility. Tasha listened intently, but her mind was racing. She had expected to talk about work, but the way he was looking at her now made her feel like something more was coming. Dominic continued. I think it's time for you to lead your own project, Tasha. Something big. You've earned it. Tasha's heart soared. She had worked hard for this moment, and now it was finally here. But as she looked at Dominic, she realized something else. He was giving her more than just a project. He was giving her the chance to truly step into her own power. I don't know what to say, Tasha replied, her voice soft but full of gratitude. I'm ready, she added, her confidence growing with every word. Dominic's smile was both proud and warm. "I knew you were," he said. As they discussed the details of the new project, Tasha felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She wasn't just working for a paycheck anymore. She was building something meaningful, something that would shape her future. And for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. When the meeting ended, Tasha left the conference room with a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to take on the world, and no one, not even her past, could hold her back. Weeks passed, and Tasha's life continued to evolve in ways she had never imagined. As the lead on her own project, she found herself stepping into new roles that required skills she had never thought she possessed. But the transition was smoother than she expected, thanks to the guidance and trust that Dominic had shown her. Every morning, she walked into the office with more confidence, determined to prove that she deserved the opportunity. The project she was leading was a major expansion for the company, one that involved negotiating with several large firms and potential partners. It was no small task, but Tasha had proven herself time and time again. She spent hours in meetings, reviewing contracts, and discussing strategy. With every decision she made, she felt her confidence grow. As the project moved forward, she found herself facing challenges that tested her ability to stay composed under pressure. But every time she encountered a roadblock, she remembered the lessons she had learned from Dominic: to stay calm, to think critically, and to trust herself. One afternoon, as she was preparing for a crucial meeting with a potential investor, she was interrupted by a knock on her office door. It was Dominic. He stepped inside, his usual calm demeanor masking the seriousness in his expression. "Tasha," he began, his voice steady. "How's everything going with the project? I've been hearing great things, but I want to hear it from you." Tasha smiled, a sense of pride filling her chest. "Everything's on track. We've made significant progress, and the investor meeting this afternoon is crucial. I'm confident we'll close the deal." Dominic nodded, but there was a hint of something more in his gaze. "You've been doing incredible work, Tasha, but I want you to remember something." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. "You don't have to do everything alone. You've got a team, and they're all here to support you." Tasha felt a slight tension in her chest. She had always been independent, always felt like she had to prove herself on her own. But Dominic's words made her realize that she didn't have to carry the weight of everything by herself. She had a team, and they were there for her. She took a deep breath and nodded. "I appreciate that, Dominic. I've been so focused on proving myself that I've forgotten how important it is to rely on others." Dominic smiled, his expression softening. "You're doing great, Tasha. Just remember, you're not alone in this." The meeting with the investor went smoothly, and by the end of the day, Tasha had secured the deal. It was a huge victory, and she couldn't help but feel a rush of accomplishment. As she left the conference room, her phone buzzed with a message from her sister, Keisha. Asterisk, "Mom says she's proud of you. You're doing amazing things. We're all rooting for you." Asterisk, Tasha couldn't help but smile as she read the message. Her family had always supported her, and now, as her career continued to take off, she realized just how much their belief in her had shaped who she was today. The next few weeks brought even more success. Tasha continued to lead her project with confidence, and her professional relationships grew stronger. But it was the moments outside of work that mattered most to her. She began to spend more time with her family, reconnecting with the people who had always been there for her. As she sat at the dinner table with her mother and Keisha one evening, she couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. She had come so far from the woman who had been ridiculed and ignored. She had worked hard to get here, and now she was finally living the life she had always dreamed of. But there was still something on Tasha's mind. As much as she had grown in her career, she couldn't ignore the connection she had with Dominic. She hadn't seen him in the same light as the other employees. Their relationship was different, more personal, more meaningful. And as time went on, that connection only seemed to deepen. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Dominic invited her out to dinner. It wasn't uncommon for him to invite his team to discuss business over a meal, but this time, something felt different. Tasha wasn't sure what to expect, but she couldn't deny the curiosity bubbling inside her. They met at a quiet restaurant, far from the buzz of the office. The atmosphere was relaxed, and for the first time in a long while, Tasha felt at ease. As they sat down, Dominic smiled at her across the table. "I've been meaning to tell you, Tasha, he began, his voice gentle. You've become more than just a colleague to me. You've become someone I truly respect. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She had always admired Dominic, but hearing him say those words made her feel something more, something deeper than she had expected. Thank you, she said softly, unsure of what else to say. Dominic's eyes softened, and for a moment, the business world seemed to disappear. I don't say this lightly, he continued, but I've come to realize that what we have, this connection, is something special. It's not just about work for me anymore. Tasha felt a mix of emotions, surprise, warmth, and something else she couldn't quite name. She had never expected her relationship with Dominic to evolve this way. She had come to him as an employee, someone in need of guidance, but now it seemed like they were standing on the edge of something new. As the evening wore on, they spoke more freely, sharing stories about their lives outside of work. Tasha learned more about Dominic's past, the challenges he had faced, the people who had shaped him. It was a side of him she had never seen before, and it only made her respect him more. When the dinner came to an end, Dominic paid the bill, and as they stood to leave, he placed a hand on Tasha's shoulder. You're a remarkable woman, Tasha. Don't ever forget that. Tasha smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was just playing a part in someone else's story. She was living her own story, and it was one she was proud of. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer the person she used to be. And with the support of her family, her team, and Dominic, she was ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and Tasha's transformation from the quiet, invisible woman she once was into a powerful figure in the business world continued to unfold. The project she had been leading had taken off, and the respect she had earned from her colleagues and superiors had built her reputation. She felt a sense of pride every time she walked into the office, but it wasn't just about the success anymore. It was about the person she had become. Despite her achievements, Tasha couldn't ignore the subtle shifts happening within her relationship with Dominic. They had always shared a professional bond, but as time went on, their interactions began to carry a deeper, more personal tone. Their late-night conversations about the direction of the company were now punctuated with moments of vulnerability. There was a connection between them that felt undeniable, and though Tasha tried to push it aside, it lingered in the back of her mind. She had grown to admire Dominic not just for his leadership, but for his honesty, his openness, and the way he treated her with respect that went beyond their professional roles. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to confront what it all meant. One Friday evening, as the workweek came to a close, Tasha found herself in Dominic's office. They were reviewing the final details of a new venture the company was about to undertake. The office was quiet, save for the low hum of the city outside and the sound of their voices. Tasha, Dominic said, his voice softer than usual. You've been doing an amazing job. I want you to know that I see how much you're putting into this. You're more than just a team member to me. You're a key part of this company's success. His words hit her in a way she hadn't expected. She knew he respected her, but the weight of his sincerity made her heart race. Thank you, Dominic, she replied, her voice steady but her thoughts a whirlwind. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. Dominic stood up from his desk and walked over to where she was sitting, his presence filling the space between them. For a moment, there was silence, and Tasha could feel the air between them shift. She met his gaze, and in that instant, she saw something more in his eyes, a mixture of admiration and something deeper, something unspoken. Tasha, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to be honest with you. You've changed the way I see things, the way I approach not just work, but life. And I think I've come to realize that my feelings for you go beyond just respect. I care about you. Tasha's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a rush of emotion she hadn't anticipated. She had been so focused on her career, on building this new life, that she hadn't stopped to think about how Dominic might feel. She had always kept a professional distance, but now, the walls she had built were starting to crumble. Dominic, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I don't know what to say. I never expected this. Dominic stepped closer, his gaze softening. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. You're someone special, Tasha. And no matter what happens, I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've brought into my life. Tasha looked at him, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. She had always admired him, respected him, but now there was a new layer to their connection, one that she hadn't expected to find. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I care about you too, Dominic," she finally said, her voice steady. "But I've been so focused on proving myself, on building something for myself, that I don't know if I'm ready for anything more." Dominic nodded, his expression understanding. "I get it, Tasha. I don't want to rush anything. I just needed you to know how I feel. And I'm happy to take things slow, if that's what you want." Tasha smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew that whatever came next, she was ready to face it. With Dominic, with her career, with the life she had built, she was finally in control. The next few weeks saw their relationship deepen, though they took things slow, allowing time for trust to grow. Tasha continued to excel in her role, and with Dominic's unwavering support, she found herself taking on more responsibilities and leading more initiatives. The balance between their professional relationship and their personal connection was delicate, but it felt right. Tasha knew that whatever happened, she was no longer the person she had once been. She had discovered strength and resilience she never knew she had, and she was finally beginning to embrace the life that was unfolding before her. One evening, after another successful project launch, Dominic invited Tasha out for a quiet dinner. The atmosphere was relaxed, a far cry from the high-stakes meetings they were used to. As they sat across from each other, enjoying their meal, Dominic leaned forward, his eyes reflecting a sense of contentment. "Tasha," he said, his voice soft, "I'm proud of you. You've become more than just someone I work with. You're someone I trust, someone I care about. I'm glad we're doing this, together." Tasha smiled, her heart swelling. With emotion, she had come so far, from the woman who had once been overlooked and mocked to the woman sitting here now, confident and fulfilled. She had built something of her own, something meaningful, and it wasn't just about the career. It was about the people she had met along the way, the relationships she had formed, and the strength she had discovered within herself. As the evening continued, Tasha realized that no matter what the future held, she was ready. She had come into her own, and nothing could take that away from her. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she was confident that she was on the right path. And with Dominic by her side, she knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. The days grew longer, and with each passing moment, Tasha felt a stronger sense of purpose in her life. The projects she had led continued to thrive, and her professional reputation soared higher. But it was the quiet moments, the ones spent with family and friends, that meant the most. She had truly come into her own, and it was no longer just about what she was building in the office. It was about the woman she was becoming. Dominic, too, had continued to be a constant source of support. The connection they had was undeniable, and though they both continued to take their time with it, Tasha knew she was ready for whatever path they would walk together. They spent more time together outside of the office, sharing dinner or quiet evenings discussing life, business, and their shared vision for the future. But as their bond grew stronger, so did the weight of the questions Tasha had been avoiding. What did this mean for her future? Was she ready to take the next step? Or was she still just trying to prove herself in a world that had once told her she didn't belong? One Friday evening, Dominic asked Tasha to join him for a business dinner with some of the company's top investors. It was an important event, but this time, the invitation didn't feel like a professional obligation. Instead, it felt like an opportunity for Tasha to step into her own in ways she never had before. The evening was filled with conversations about growth, strategy, and innovation, but through it all, Tasha felt a quiet sense of pride. She had become someone others looked to for advice, for direction, and for leadership. She wasn't just in the room anymore. She was helping shape the conversation. As the night drew to a close, Dominic took a moment to step outside with her. The night air was crisp, and the city lights glowed softly around them. "Tasha," he began, his voice steady, "I've been thinking about everything you've accomplished. You've made such an impact on this company, but more importantly, you've made an impact on me." Tasha turned to face him, feeling the weight of his words. "Dominic," she said softly, "I don't know what to say. You've given me so much already." Dominic reached out and gently took her hand in his. "You've earned everything, Tasha. You've worked so hard, and you've proven your worth time and time again. But there's something I need you to understand." His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, The world around them seemed to fade. I'm not just proud of what you've done professionally. I'm proud of the person you've become. I've come to realize that what we have, it's more than just respect. I care about you, Tasha, in ways I didn't expect. And I want you to know that you don't have to be anyone else. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'm here, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next, with you. Tasha felt a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. She had worked so hard to build her own life, to prove that she could stand on her own. But now, in this moment, she realized that maybe she didn't have to do it alone. Maybe the next chapter of her life wasn't just about success in the workplace. Maybe it was about building something even more meaningful. I care about you too, Dominic, Tasha said, her voice steady but filled with warmth. I think I've been so focused on building my career, on proving myself, that I didn't stop to think about what really matters. Dominic smiled, the warmth in his eyes evident. You don't have to figure everything out right now, Tasha. We have time. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. They stood together for a moment, the city's hum a distant background to the quiet understanding that passed between them. It was a moment of clarity for Tasha. She had built a life she was proud of, a career she had fought for, but it was the relationships she had cultivated, her family, her friends, and now Dominic, that made it all worthwhile. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, new opportunities, and continued success. Tasha's project continued to grow, and her impact on the company was undeniable. But amidst the hustle of her professional life, she made sure to take time for the people who mattered most. She spent weekends with her family, reconnecting with the roots that had given her strength. She and Dominic continued to grow closer, finding a rhythm that worked for them both. One Saturday evening, after a long week of work, Tasha and Dominic decided to take a weekend trip to a small, peaceful town by the coast. It was a chance to get away from the pressures of work and simply enjoy each other's company. The town was quiet, its streets lined with quaint shops and cozy cafes. They spent the day walking along the beach, talking about everything and nothing, allowing the peaceful surroundings to wash away the stress of the week. That evening, as they sat on the porch of a small beachside cottage, Dominic looked at Tasha with a smile. I'm glad we did this, he said, his voice calm and content. Tasha smiled back, her heart full. Me too, she said softly. I've never felt more at peace. It was in that moment that Tasha realized something important. She had come so far, but it wasn't just about the career, the accolades, or the success she had achieved. It was about the people she surrounded herself with, the love and support she had found, and the person she had become. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew she was ready. She was ready to face whatever came next, with Dominic by her side, and with the confidence that no matter where life took her, she would always be enough. With that thought, she leaned back in her chair, letting the sound of the waves crashing against the shore wash over her. For the first time in a long while, Tasha felt truly at home with herself. The weeks that followed were a period of growth for both Tasha and Dominic. Their professional relationship had deepened, and so had their personal connection. Tasha continued to rise in the company, leading projects with the kind of confidence she had never thought possible just a few months ago. She was no longer just the woman who worked behind the scenes. She was a leader in her own right, commanding respect not just from her colleagues, but from the highest levels of the company. But amid all the success, Tasha found herself facing new questions. Questions about what truly mattered to her and how to balance the life she had built with the life she had left behind. As she worked on new initiatives and expanded her role, she found herself thinking more and more about her family. The warmth and support they had always provided felt like a steady anchor in her fast-moving world. Her mother, who had worked so hard all her life, had been a constant source of strength. Her younger sister, Keisha, was now thriving in college, something Tasha had worked so hard to make possible. The distance between her new life and her old one felt wide, but every weekend, she would return home, finding comfort in the familiar faces and the love that always greeted her. She had not just built a career, but had started to rebuild the connections that had been lost when she focused entirely on survival. One evening, after an intense week of meetings, Tasha was walking out of the office when Dominic caught up with her. Tasha, he said, his voice carrying a note of something more than just professional concern. I know you've been under a lot of pressure lately, but I want to tell you how impressed I am by everything you've done. Tasha turned to him, a little surprised. They had always shared professional admiration, but this felt different. "Thank you, Dominic," she replied, her voice warm. "I'm just trying to keep up with everything." Dominic smiled and shook his head. "No, it's more than that. You're not just keeping up, you're setting the pace." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, but Tasha couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. She was no longer just trying to fit in. She was carving out her own place in this world, and Dominic was a part of that. The following week, Tasha was given an even bigger responsibility. She was tasked with overseeing an acquisition that would change the company's trajectory. It was a huge opportunity, but also a daunting challenge. She spent countless hours researching, strategizing, and negotiating, each moment filled with the pressure of making the right decision. She could feel the stakes rising, and for the first time in a long while, she began to question if she was ready. She thought back to when she had first started at the company, when she was just the woman trying to prove herself. But now, the woman who had been underestimated was leading major initiatives. She had come so far, but the weight of it all was starting to take its toll. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Dominic called her into his office. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a more serious expression. "Tasha," he began, his voice steady but filled with care. "I can see how hard you're working. But I want you to remember something. There's no shame in asking for help. You've built something incredible, but you don't have to carry it all alone." Tasha looked at him, his words echoing in her mind. She had always been the type to take everything on herself, but now she realized that maybe it was okay to lean on the people who believed in her. "Thank you, Dominic," she said softly. "I've been so focused on proving myself that I haven't stopped to think about what I need." Dominic smiled, his eyes softening. "You're doing amazing things, Tasha, but don't lose sight of what truly matters. You deserve to enjoy the journey too." Those words stuck with Tasha long after she left his office. She realized that, while she had been focused on building her career and proving her worth, she had neglected some of the things that truly made life meaningful: her relationships, her peace of mind, and her own happiness. The next few days, Tasha began to make small changes. She asked for help when she needed it, delegating tasks to her team. She spent more time with her family, savoring the moments that had once been so fleeting. And most importantly, she made time for herself. She took long walks along the beach, sat quietly with a book in hand, and reflected on how far she had come. Dominic's words resonated with her. She had built a life that was fulfilling, but she knew now that it was okay to take a step back and enjoy the ride. As the months passed, Tasha continued to excel in her work, but she found more balance in her life. She nurtured the relationships that mattered most to her, and as she did, she found herself growing even stronger in her role at the company. She wasn't just a leader in her career. She was becoming the woman she had always wanted to be. One evening, as she and Dominic sat in the quiet of his office, discussing the next phase of their project, he looked at her with a mixture of admiration and something deeper. "Tasha," he said quietly, "I know we've both come a long way, and I want you to know that I'm proud of everything you've accomplished, but I'm also proud of the person you've become." Tasha felt her heart swell at his words. She had worked so hard to prove herself, but now, with Dominic by her side, she realized that the journey wasn't just about the destination. It was about the people she had met along the way, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered within herself. "Thank you, Dominic," she replied, her voice full of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Dominic's smile was warm, and for the first time, Tasha realized that she had truly found her place, not just in the company, but in the world. She was no longer defined by what others thought of her. She was defined by who she had become, and for the first time, she was at peace with that. As the months passed, Tasha found herself not only thriving professionally, but also finding a sense of balance that had eluded her for years. Her career continued to soar, with new projects, meetings, and opportunities constantly filling her schedule. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she was finally in control, not just of her work, but of her life. Dominic remained a steady presence by her side, both as a mentor and a companion. The trust they had built over the months turned into something deeper, and Tasha began to feel a sense of peace she had never known. Their relationship had grown naturally, with no pressure, no expectations, just an understanding that they both valued each other as more than just colleagues. It was a new chapter for her, and she was ready to embrace it. One evening, after a long week of work, Dominic invited Tasha to dinner at a quiet rooftop restaurant in the city. The place was elegant but understated, with twinkling lights that reflected the soft glow of the setting sun. It was the kind of atmosphere that allowed them to relax and escape the constant buzz of the office. As they sat across from each other, Dominic spoke first. "Tasha, I've been thinking a lot lately about everything we've built together. Not just the company, but everything else too. You've come a long way, and I'm proud of what you've achieved." Tasha smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Thank you, Dominic. I never could have done it without your support. You've always believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Dominic reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "It wasn't just about belief, Tasha. It was about you. You have always had everything it takes to succeed. I've just been here to help guide you, to give you the confidence to see that in yourself." Tasha's heart swelled at his words. She had worked so hard to prove herself, and hearing Dominic acknowledge her growth in such a way filled her with a sense of accomplishment she had never known. But there was something more to this dinner than just gratitude for the work they had done together. Tasha could feel it in the way Dominic looked at her, in the way his gaze lingered just a moment longer than usual. "Dominic," she said softly, "I've been thinking about us too." Dominic's eyes softened, and he smiled. "You don't have to say anything, Tasha. I just want you to know that no matter where this goes, I'm happy with what we've built. You're more than just a colleague to me. You're someone I care deeply about." The sincerity in his voice sent a rush of emotions through Tasha. She had never expected her relationship with Dominic to evolve into something so meaningful, but now, as they sat together in this quiet moment, she realized how much he had become a part of her life. "I care about you too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than I ever thought I could. But I also know that I've come so far on my own. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I want to take it one step at a time." Dominic nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand, Tasha, and there's no rush. We've both come a long way, and we'll continue to grow, whatever that looks like." They sat in silence for a while, just enjoying each other's company. The world outside felt distant, as if it were just the two of them in their own little bubble, free from the pressures of work, expectations, and the future. It was in that moment that Tasha realized something important. She had spent so much time focused on her career, on building a life that proved her worth, that she had forgotten to pause and appreciate the journey itself. She wasn't just chasing success anymore. She was living it, and she was surrounded by people who cared about her and believed in her, including Dominic. The rest of the evening passed in a peaceful haze, filled with soft conversation and laughter. As they left the restaurant, Dominic placed a hand on the small of Tasha's back, guiding her toward the car. It was a simple gesture, but it felt meaningful. It felt like a promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The next few weeks brought more opportunities for Tasha. She led a new project that took the company in an exciting new direction, and as always, she felt the support of her team and Dominic at her side. But she also found herself taking more time for herself, enjoying the moments outside of work that allowed her to recharge. She went to the beach with her family, spent quiet evenings at home, and took long walks through the city. She was learning how to balance her personal and professional life in a way that felt fulfilling and sustainable. One weekend, Dominic surprised her with a weekend getaway to the mountains. It was a place she had always wanted to visit, but had never had the chance. They spent the days hiking, exploring, and talking about everything, from their hopes and dreams to the simple things in life that made them happy. It was one of those rare moments when time seemed to slow down, and Tasha felt a deep sense of contentment. As they sat on a bench overlooking the mountains, Dominic turned to her, his eyes filled with affection. "Tasha," he said, "I know we've been through a lot together, and I'm grateful for every step we've taken. I just want you to know that no matter what happens, I'm here for you." Tasha smiled, her heart full. "I'm here too, Dominic, and I'm ready for whatever comes next." Together, the mountains stretched out before them, vast and beautiful, and Tasha knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it. She had built a life of strength, love, and purpose, and with Dominic by her side, she felt like anything was possible. Months had passed since that quiet weekend getaway, and Tasha's life continued to unfold in ways she had never expected. The bond between her and Dominic had deepened, and she could feel the change in herself. Stronger, more confident, more at peace. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, she couldn't ignore the growing sense that she was approaching a new crossroads. Her career was thriving. The projects she led were succeeding beyond expectations, and her influence within the company had become undeniable. She had worked tirelessly to build a reputation for herself, but now that she had accomplished so much, she felt the pull of something else. A life outside the office, a life where she could truly enjoy the fruits of her labor. The balance between work and personal life had always been a struggle for Tasha. But now, with Dominic by her side, she began to embrace the idea that she didn't have to choose one over the other. One evening, after a particularly grueling week of meetings and deadlines, Tasha found herself sitting at her desk, staring out the window. The city lights twinkled below, and she could feel the weight of the day lifting off her shoulders. She had a moment to herself, something that had become rare lately. Just as she was about to wrap up for the night, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keisha. Hey Tasha, Mom said she's been feeling down lately. She misses you. You should come by this weekend. We can all hang out. Tasha's heart softened at the thought of her mother. She hadn't been able to spend as much time with her family as she had wanted, especially with all the demands of work. The guilt she felt was a constant reminder that no matter how far she had come in her career, she couldn't neglect the people who had always been there for her. Without a second thought, she replied, I'll be there. I miss you guys too. The weekend arrived quickly, and Tasha made the drive back to her childhood home. As she walked through the door, her mother was the first to greet her, pulling her into a tight embrace. Tasha, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're here, her mother said, her voice filled with warmth. Tasha could see the weariness in her mother's eyes, but also the joy of having her daughter home. I missed you, Mom, Tasha replied, her voice thick with emotion. She hadn't realized how much she had missed these moments. Moments of being surrounded by family, by people who didn't care about her title or her success. They just loved her for who she was. As the evening unfolded, they sat around the dinner table, talking about everything and nothing. Keisha had a new story to share from college, and their mother beamed with pride as she listened. Tasha realized just how much she had missed these simple moments. They weren't about achievements or accolades. They were about connection, about being present, and about the love that had been a constant in her life. Later that evening, after the house had quieted down, Tasha found herself sitting on the porch with her mother, sipping on tea. The cool breeze wrapped around them as they looked up at the stars. You've really come a long way, Tasha, her mother said, her voice filled with pride. I'm so proud of you. But don't forget, no matter how far you go, you always have a place here with us. Tasha smiled, feeling a warmth fill her chest. I know, Mom. I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, and I won't forget where I came from. Her mother nodded, a contented smile on her face. I know you won't. You've always had a good heart, Tasha, and that's what matters most. The words hit Tasha harder than she expected. She had spent so much time trying to prove herself to the world, trying to show that she was capable, that she had value. But her mother's words reminded her of something important. The value wasn't just in her work or her accomplishments. It was in who she was, and the love she had to give. As the weekend came to a close, Tasha felt a renewed sense of clarity. She had been so focused on her career that she had forgotten to nurture the things that truly mattered: her family, her relationships, her own well-being. She realized that she could have both, a fulfilling career and a fulfilling personal life. On Monday morning, as she returned to the office, Tasha felt a new sense of purpose. The projects she had been working on were still as important as ever, but now, she knew she could take a step back when needed. She could ask for help, lean on her team, and prioritize the people she loved without feeling guilty. And as the days passed, Tasha found that she was even more effective at work. The balance she had been searching for had finally found its place, and it wasn't just about doing everything herself. It was about sharing the load, trusting others, and making time for what truly mattered. One evening, Dominic called her into his office. It had become a habit of theirs to catch up after a long day of meetings, and Tasha appreciated the quiet moments with him. Tasha, Dominic said, his voice serious but warm. I've been thinking about everything we've accomplished together, and I just want to say how proud I am of you. You've made a huge impact on this company. But more than that, you've become someone I truly admire. Tasha felt a rush of emotion, but she kept her voice steady. Thank you, Dominic. That means a lot to me. I couldn't have done it without your support. Dominic smiled and stood up, walking toward her. I believe in you, Tasha. You've always had the potential to do great things, but now, you're doing them. I'm excited to see where you go next. Tasha met his gaze, feeling a connection that had deepened over time. She had come a long way from the woman who had been uncertain of herself, and she knew that whatever the future held, she was ready for it. With Dominic by her side and the support of the people who loved her, she felt confident that no matter where her journey took her, she would be able to face it with strength, grace, and an open heart. As time continued to pass, Tasha's life reached new heights. Her professional success had become undeniable, and yet, it wasn't just her career that was thriving. The balance she had found between work and personal life was beginning to shape her in ways she never imagined. She was no longer merely surviving. She was truly living. Dominic remained a steady and essential part of her journey. Their relationship, one that had started as professional respect, had blossomed into something far deeper. Tasha felt it every time they were together, whether they were discussing business or enjoying a quiet evening. There was a comfort between them, a mutual understanding, and a bond that neither of them had expected but were both beginning to cherish. One afternoon, after a particularly successful negotiation, Tasha was reviewing the documents for the upcoming partnership when Dominic appeared at her door. She looked up, smiling, as he walked in. You look like you just won the deal of the year, he said with a playful grin. I guess I did, she replied, her eyes twinkling with pride. It's all coming together. Dominic leaned against the doorframe, watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. You're amazing, Tasha. You've come so far, and you're doing things that people thought were impossible. Tasha couldn't help but blush at the compliment. She had worked so hard to get here, but hearing it from Dominic made her realize how much she had accomplished. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, her voice sincere. Your guidance has meant everything to me. He walked closer, stopping just beside her desk. You've always had it in you, Tasha. You just needed someone to believe in you. The words lingered in the air between them, and for a brief moment, Tasha felt the weight of everything they had built together. The trust, the growth, the shared moments of vulnerability, it had all led to this point. Dominic, Tasha said quietly, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what comes next. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity crossing his features. And what does the future look like to you? Tasha leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. I know I've spent so much time focused on building my career, on proving myself, but lately, I've realized that I want to find more balance. I don't want to keep running at full speed without stopping to appreciate what I have. Dominic nodded, understanding shining in his eyes. I think that's a smart decision. You've worked harder than anyone I know, and you deserve to enjoy the rewards of that. You've earned every step of your success. Tasha's gaze softened. But it's not just about the success anymore, is it? It's about the people who have supported me along the way, and about finding peace within myself. Dominic smiled, his eyes warm. I couldn't agree more. Over the next few weeks, Tasha began to take Dominic's words to heart. She slowed down, taking moments to savor her accomplishments, both big and small. She spent more time with her family, rekindling the bond with her mother and sister that had been overshadowed by her career. She even began to focus on her own well-being, taking time to exercise, meditate, and simply enjoy the quiet moments of life. And through it all, Dominic was there. They continued to spend time together outside of the office, going on walks, sharing meals, and supporting each other in ways that went beyond work. As their connection deepened, Tasha began to realize something important. She didn't have to choose between success and happiness. She could have both. One evening, Dominic surprised her with a weekend getaway to a lakeside retreat. It was exactly what she needed, a break from the fast-paced world of business, a chance to relax, recharge, and connect with the world around her. The retreat was peaceful, surrounded by nature, with nothing but the sound of the water lapping against the shore and the chirping of birds in the distance. They spent their days hiking through the woods, having long conversations by the lake, and enjoying each other's company without the pressure of the outside world. Tasha felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. In that quiet space, she realized how much she had grown, how much she had learned not just about business, but about herself. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into that office all those months ago, uncertain and unsure. She had become someone strong, capable, and confident. And she wasn't done yet. As they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset, Dominic turned to her with a look of quiet admiration. Tasha, I want you to know something. I've always believed in you, but seeing you like this, seeing you so at peace with who you are, has made me realize just how incredible you are. You've done more than just change the company. You've changed the way I look at life. Tasha smiled, feeling the sincerity in his words. I feel the same way, she said softly. You've helped me see what I'm capable of, Dominic. And I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. He reached for her hand, holding it gently in his. We've both come a long way, Tasha, and I think we're just getting started. Tasha nodded, her heart full. She knew that whatever the future held, she was ready. She had a career she was proud of, a relationship that filled her with joy, and a sense of peace that she had longed for. And with Dominic by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Tasha knew she had everything she needed to succeed, not just in business, but in life. And that was enough. She squeezed Dominic's hand and leaned back against the chair, watching the sun dip below the horizon, feeling the weight of the past few months lift off her shoulders. Whatever happened next, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of Tasha's life. Her career was flourishing, and the balance she had worked so hard to create between work, family, and herself felt more natural every day. She had grown into the person she had always wanted to be, a leader in the business world, yes, but also someone who was grounded, who valued relationships and self-care. One afternoon, as she sat in her office reviewing quarterly reports, she glanced out the window and felt a familiar sense of gratitude wash over her. She had built something incredible, not just professionally but personally, and it was more fulfilling than she had ever imagined. Dominic had been her constant support through it all, and their bond had become something deeper than either of them had anticipated. They had both changed over the months they had worked together, and as time passed, Tasha realized that they were no longer just colleagues or even just partners. They had become best friends. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, whether discussing work or simply enjoying each other's company in the quiet moments after a long day. But as close as they had become, Tasha could feel the tension of an unspoken question hanging in the air between them. She had always believed in herself and her ability to accomplish anything she set her mind to. But there was still one part of her life she hadn't fully addressed, the question of what came next for her and Dominic. She had spent so much time focusing on proving herself to the world that she had never truly allowed herself to think about her future beyond work. She hadn't thought about what she wanted in her personal life long term. Dominic had always been there for her, but what did that mean for them both in the future? Would they continue to grow together, or would their paths eventually diverge as they had so often in the past? These questions lingered in her mind, and she couldn't ignore them any longer. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their favorite restaurant, Tasha decided it was time to ask the question that had been weighing on her heart for so long. Dominic was laughing at something she had said, his eyes crinkling with warmth, but Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that it was time to speak up. Dominic, she said, her voice softer than usual. I've been thinking a lot about us. About everything we've been through. Dominic turned to her, his expression shifting from amusement to something more serious. What's on your mind, Tasha? He asked, his voice full of concern. Tasha took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts. I've been so focused on my career, on building something that proves my worth, but now I'm starting to wonder what comes next for me, for us. The words hung in the air, and she watched as Dominic processed them, his face thoughtful. You're worried about the future, he said, almost as a statement, not a question. She nodded, feeling a knot form in her stomach. I guess I've been afraid of what that future looks like. I've built so much, but it's been at the expense of thinking about the things that really matter. What if I've been so focused on proving myself that I've neglected everything else? Dominic reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. Tasha, you don't have to do everything alone. You've built something incredible, but that doesn't mean you have to carry all of it on your own. You've already proven more than enough. Tasha felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had been holding on to so much for so long, trying to prove to herself and to everyone around her that she could handle it all. But Dominic's words reminded her that it wasn't about proving something anymore. It was about finding balance. "I know," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "And I know that I don't have to carry everything alone. But what about us? What do we do now?" Dominic smiled, his grip on her hand tightening. "What we do now, Tasha, is take it one step at a time. We've been through a lot together, and we've come so far. I'm not going anywhere, and I want to face the future with you. I want to build it together." The weight that had been hanging over Tasha seemed to lift in that moment. For the first time in a long while, she felt like the future wasn't something to be feared. It was something to be embraced. And with Dominic by her side, she knew that whatever came next, they would be able to handle it together. As the night drew to a close, they left the restaurant hand in hand, the cool night air brushing against their faces. For the first time in a long while, Tasha felt at peace. She had spent so much time worrying about the unknowns, about what the future might hold, but now she realized that she didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to have everything figured out. All she needed was the courage to take the next step, to trust in herself, and to trust in Dominic. The next few months brought more success in the office, but Tasha's focus had shifted. She wasn't just measuring success by the deals she closed or the projects she led. She was measuring it by the relationships she nurtured, the people she supported, and the life she built with Dominic and her family. They continued to grow together, their bond strengthening as they faced new challenges, celebrated new victories, and navigated life side by side. One day, as they sat together on the balcony of their home, Tasha looked at Dominic and smiled. "I'm glad we're doing this together," she said, her voice full of contentment. "I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." Dominic smiled back, his eyes filled with love and admiration. "Neither would I," he said, his voice steady and confident. "This is just the beginning, Tasha. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And as they looked out at the horizon, Tasha knew that the road ahead would be filled with both challenges and triumphs. But with Dominic by her side, she was ready for whatever the future held.